Well, whenever the weather is decent, the young men cross the English Channel. Now, it's been a pretty rotten summer. Another 300 came on Wednesday. None came yesterday. It's all down to the weather. And that's why we're 20% down. It's still 20,000 people so far, but we're 20% down on last year. And I believe it is simply because of the weather. But the problem, or where to put everybody, just gets bigger and bigger, whether it's former RAF bases with distinguished World War II records, whether it's barges in the dock at Portland, which turn out, of course, later on to be unfit for use, whether it's hotels, over 300 of them, filled up around the country. But now, one I hadn't seen before. Now, this is the case of a university student halls of residence, and one that had been recently redecked, and it was described as luxury accommodation for students. And apparently, in Huddersfield, they're going to get booted out for young men that have recently crossed the Channel, and there is some considerable local anger. I'll hand it over to Anna Riley, GB News' Yorkshire and Humber reporter. Anna.
Good evening, Nigel. Yes, 168 students were due to come to this accommodation behind us, HD1 it's called, in just a matter of a few weeks' time, due to start the university term again in September. But last minute, they were notified that the Home Office have actually going to use this accommodation to house asylum seekers. 405 is what the accommodation can hold up to, so 405 rooms for asylum seekers coming over on the boats. Of course, that's left students sort of scrambling for last-minute accommodation. The provider of the accommodation said that they are doing the best that they can to help house the students, and the Home Office as well have said that they have been upfront about the unprecedented pressure being put on the asylum seeker, brought about by a significant increase in dangerous and illegal journeys into the country. And they say that they continue to work across government and local authorities to identify a range of accommodation options, and that the government remains committed to engaging with local authorities and key stakeholders as part of this process. So that's what the Home Office have said. I went out earlier into Huddersfield to ask people their views on this accommodation being used for asylum seekers instead of students as planned, and this is what they had to say.
People who live near, then that would be an issue for them because they could find alternatives, but it would be better if they prioritize people who live further away so they could attend university without an issue.
I think they should try and accommodate them somewhere else, so they don't have to be so close to university, so university students can live here.
Well, I think, obviously you need somewhere for the asylum seekers. I think it's awkward a little bit for the students that are already in situ, but there is a lot of student accommodation around, it seems, and I think overall they shouldn't have too much trouble in the long run getting people good accommodation for students.
So that's what people in the city centre have been saying. But I'm joined now by Sajid Ali and his daughter. He lives with his family just right opposite the HD1 building behind us. And it was only when I came to speak to you earlier that you actually found out that this accommodation was now going to be used for asylum seekers. He'd had no prior notice from Prestige Living or from the Home Office or local council.
Nothing, no idea what was going on. As far as I was aware, it was going to be student accommodation again. But I'm really disappointed that they didn't notify anyone, as this road has also families as well as vulnerable elderly people that live here. And we don't know what type of people they're going to move in here. We don't know if they're going to be families. We don't know if it's only going to be men, because the college is just a stone's throw away, and lots of children go to the college, and they're very vulnerable. So if they're going to be men, we don't know if they're men, drug dealers, rapists, soldiers. We don't know what guys they've come across the boats in.
It does tend to be predominantly men, like you've mentioned. And how does that make you feel, knowing that your family are going to be nearby?
I'm very appalled, I'm very angry, to be honest with you. The council should have notified the residents at least. I mean, we only live across the road. It would have been hard for them to send us some letters, some notification, what's going to happen. Or they could have given us an option are you happy with such a thing happening with the accommodation across the road? They could have put it to a vote. They could have actually moved on to the edge of Huddersfield, where there's a lot of open, large buildings that could have been utilised or demolished for housing.
Yeah, as it is a 4-minute walk to the university from here, so close to the city centre. What would you say to people, though? We played out views from the public earlier who said, well, these people have to go somewhere, you know, students can find other accommodation.
Well, the students are going to eventually get their distinctions and they're going to run the country. These asylum seekers aren't going to do that. You don't even know what they're going to do. They might not work for the next 10, 15 years. They might be burgling you for the next 10, 15 years because you don't know who's actually come over. They could come over with no identification, nothing, no government documents. And some of them, yeah, they're okay, but not all of them, because you can see them around town begging for money, and then you see them jumping in their fancy cars and driving off. And it's been going on for a number of years, this.
Thank you for your views there, Sajid. Really appreciate that. So that's the view from people in Huddersfield city centre and a concerned local resident with his family. A bit nervous about that announcement that he's just found out from me this afternoon, that asylum seekers are due to move opposite at this HD1 building.
Anna Riley, thank you very much indeed. And what Sajid was saying there is how people feel all over the country. They are naturally nervous about large groups of young men being moved into whatever accommodation it is. As he said, we've no idea who they are. We've no idea whether they've been involved in the Syrian war. We've no idea whether some of them are allied to ISIS. We've no idea how many genuinely would qualify in traditional terms as refugees. And there is deep disquiet all over the country, and yet no sign of it ending.